everyone, so today I'm going to show you an obsessively over-the-top, time-intensive way to do a no makeup look. So this look, I'm kind of doing it for fun. I'm trying to make it take as much time as possible, but it also is something that I kind of enjoy doing, just spending like an excessive amount of time applying makeup that people can't even tell you're wearing. So let's get started. So I'm starting off with Physicians Formula Super BB, and this is a BB cream, kind of tinted moisturizer. So this is in the lightest color. They don't have a ton of colors in this line, which, surprise, surprise, is not surprising at all. So it's got your sunscreen in there. It's basically just a tinted moisturizer, which I prefer on days where I'm going for like a no makeup look. And I've got my damp Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge because I want to make sure that it's nice and dewy, nice and even, and that it's really like stamped into my skin so that it's not kind of sitting on top and then it's not streaky, so it looks like I actually have just really nice skin. So I just put a blob on the back of my hand, and now I'm just gonna dot this on my face around where I need coverage. So like in the front section on my face is a lot more red and I have more acne scarring there. I also like to apply it to my neck so that everything's nice and blended, especially because this color isn't like perfect for me. It works, you know, but it's not a perfect blend because for the lightest shade, it's not all that light. And then just take my sponge and dab, dab, dab. And when you get bangs, you have to learn to kind of pull your foundation up, you know, where your bangs are going to cover it, because the bangs are going to move at some point in time during the day and you don't want to have like a weird red patch. And then also you have to add a little bit in between your eyebrows, especially if you have kind of like big bold eyebrows like me, like people are gonna notice. So just kind of lift your hair out of the way and dab in between. There we go. That's good enough. So now I've applied all my foundation, but I'm still just kind of dabbing it in because I really want it to like mesh with my skin and look totally flawless. And I'm still just kind of focusing on the center part of my face where I get the most redness. And now I'm going to go in with concealer, and I've got the trusty Laura Mercier Secret Camouflage, and this is in the shade SC2. So a la Lisa Eldridge, I'm going in with a little tiny brush here to just do some pinpoint concealing on any little spots. And then I'm going to use a kind of salmony shade to help with my inner eye corner slash eye bag situation that's going on there. And I'm going to try to use the teeny tiny mirror that's inside of it. They have like so much room in there, and they put like the tiniest little mirror in. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm just picking up a tiny little bit of product, and then I'm going to just dab it what needs dabbing. So I have some broken capillaries kind of around the sides of my nose and underneath my nose that I'm going to cover up. And to do the majority of the blending, I'm just going to go back in and use the kind of pointy part of the sponge to dab away all the edges like this. This does remove just like a little bit of the concealer too, but it's gonna only help to make it look more natural, so who cares? Alright, so face concealer is done, and I'm going to zoom you in just a little bit so you can see what I'm gonna do to the eye concealing. I'm hoping you can see because it's a little kind of very bright in here and it's gonna throw off the camera a little bit. I have a lot of darkness in my inner corner here, and then a lot of kind of like purpliness right around here, and then I have some veins that kind of pop out right around here. So what I'm going to do is take the kind of salmony color, use that for where it's kind of a darker purpley blue shade, and then I'm going to use the normal, you know, flesh tone color to do the rest of the work. A lot of people say Secret Camouflage is a little bit too heavy to use for them on their inner corners and, you know, like under eye area, but I don't have that problem. And here you can see how I'm using the two different shades. And then when I blend them together with the Real Techniques sponge, you'll see how that like actually helps. And this is why the pointy end is really helpful. And from me doing that, you can see the huge difference between this eye that I concealed and this eye that I didn't. So that is eye concealing done, and while I've got you still zoomed on in here, I'm going to do the couple little tiny tweaks I'm going to do with the eyes. So basically what I'm going to do is just a tiny little bit of like eye contouring, and I'm taking the brown shade from this Kevyn Aucoin Neo Bronzer and the Real Techniques Essential Crease Brush to put in a tiny little bit of a crease. And I mean like really tiny little. And you see how that makes like just the tiniest little difference to make it seem like my eyes are just like a little bit bigger, a little bit deeper, and it just kind of deepens up that crease, you know what I mean? And I'm going to do the exact same thing with a tiny little baby brush right under my lower lash line. And this just helps to give that tiny little baby bit of definition to the eyes so that your eyelashes will look a little bit fuller. Your eyes will look a little bit more like, but without actually putting like makeup on. So I have my bangs just like a tiny little bit shorter right now than I normally do. So what I'm going to do to make my eyebrows stand out just a tiny little bit is use this Jane Iredale eyebrow pencil and just put a tiny couple little strokes just on this inner part right here where I don't, like my eyebrow hairs just aren't kind of growing as much. So I'm literally just putting in teeny tiny little hairs, which helps my kind of inner eyebrow area look that much fuller, that much more defined. All right, and then the last thing I'm doing on the eyes is putting on just like a little bit of mascara, and I'm just gonna wiggle this into the roots and lightly pull through because I don't want to add a ton of length or really much color at all, but just enough to define my eyelashes a little bit. For this, I'm using the Touch in Soul Stretch X Stretched Lash Effect Mascara. And I'm not gonna curl my eyelashes for this either because that would just, you know, be the little icing on the top of the cake to make it look like actually fake. So I'm just wiggling in and lightly pulling through. And that is all that I'm doing to the lashes. Ooh, another hot tip is to literally just kind of like scrape off as much of the mascara, you know, like the painty part, as you can from the brush, because that will help you not apply so much to your eyelashes. It's a really helpful 10-second trick. It really does make a difference for not applying like a ton of mascara by mistake. And then to really make sure that the mascara looks as natural as possible, I'm going in with a lash groomer and just gonna pull through to make sure that the mascara doesn't make any clumps and make sure it's really nice and separated. So finishing touches, I'm going to put on just a tiny little bit of blush to kind of make me look a little less dead. So I'm going for the coral color in this Neo Bronzer palette and applying it with the Real Techniques contour brush. And even applying, like barely touching this to my skin. But you see how it makes just like a little bit, it makes just like enough of a difference without looking super obvious, which I really like. And to take it one step further, I'm gonna bounce it in with the Real Techniques sponge that I was using, and any leftover foundation that's on there is going to help blend this in really nicely. And last is lips. I'm using the NARS Dolce Vita pencil, which is the closest shade that I have to my lips, and really lightly applying this just so it has a little bit more color and a little bit more shape. But I'm literally just like grazing this over my lips. And I like that this has a matte texture. I mean, it would be helpful to use just like a lip pencil and maybe use a lip balm at the same time, but because this has a matte texture, it doesn't look fake. Because if it were glossy, like your lips are not naturally glossy, but they are naturally a little bit matte. So I'm just kind of dotting this on to even out the shape and the color of my lips. And this is the finished look. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please subscribe and I will see you next time.